Right, hello everybody. My name is Glenn, and today I'm wanting to share with you a experiment I did using film photography quite a long time ago. And it was an experiment basically where I kind of matched up different speeds of color film with different types of lights that you would use in a film situation. And basically, as you can see in this graph here, what I've tried to do is I've tried to kind of almost make like a color chart where I'm kind of comparing, different types of lights along the side with different sort of speeds of film along the top, and also I've tried to use a little bit of a mixture between Kodak and Fuji, and some different types of lights, and there's gaps in my research here. Things I've learned from this experiment. There's a few things. First of all, energy efficient bulbs look very green on film when it comes to using household bulbs. And shooting film, going green, unfortunately, literally means going green, like as in your photos will look green if you use energy efficient bulbs. Some of the photos that I took in this experiment were cross-processed as well, meaning basically I used Fuji Velvia 50 and had it developed in color negative chemicals, which basically kind of fucks up the colors, but it can look quite artistic sometimes. I actually wanted a different roll to be cross-processed, but the lab kind of got them mixed up and cross-processed this one instead, but kind of interesting. But anyway, this is an energy efficient bulb and it's been cross-processed. As you can see, it makes the green look even more green, but if it's not cross-processed, it's not quite that extreme. But yeah, that's another thing I learned was that Fuji has a much more red and pink feel to it and makes Kodak look yellow by comparison. As you can see, this picture, I've got some photos that I've taken using Fuji stocks on one side, some photos that I've taken using Kodak stocks on the other side. Fuji, the skin tone is a lot more kind of pinky, reddy, salmony, whatever the hell you want to call it. Kodak is a lot more, it's slightly more kind of yellowy, duller tinge. This is some Fuji film stock, but it's taken on an energy efficient bulb, and what I think has happened here is the kind of the greeny sort of tones of the energy efficient bulb have kind of been balanced out by the fact that kind of Fuji would ordinarily have a more pinky kind of color to the skin tone, and it's made this kind of look more like a kind of Kodak shot. So anyway, here's a picture of the photos that I took using 60-watt bulbs. The one that isn't labeled, because I must have forgot to label it in this picture for some reason on this slide, that is Fuji Velvia 50, and it's the cross-processed version, and I quite like the way that kind of looks. Skin tone on it's got a nice effect to it. These don't have lampshades around them. I'm basically just using the straight up 60-watt bulbs, shining them straight onto people. That's the reason why it's kind of looks a bit intense. The Kodak 200 there looks completely ridiculous. The amount of kind of glow that he's got on his face, he looks like he's going to burst into flames any second or something like that, or as if he's just very, very, very ill. So yeah, use a lampshade if you're gonna, but you can see the difference. These are photos that I took using what was labelled as a rustic bulb, There's a photo of it on the end there. These bulbs that I found at Wilkinson's when I was trying to get normal 60-watt bulbs. And I kind of saw these ones, the rustic bulbs, and I wasn't sure whether they actually made any difference or whether it was just some sort of pretentious kind of thing. So I decided to get 3 of them and sort of test them out, see if they actually change the color temperature, and they do actually. They have more of a kind of warm kind of browny sepia type glow to them. Once again, the Kodak 200 here looks kind of very sickly. I'm very fond of the cross-processed Fuji 50 there. That one's kind of interesting. What you see in some of these photos as well is you can see a little bit of glare in the side of the photos, particularly on the lower speeds, because with 60-watt bulbs on the lower speeds I had to put the bulbs like very, very, very close to the side of my model's face in order to kind of get good exposure, because they weren't strong enough, so I had to push them in even very close. Okay, next we've got the 58-watt energy saver bulbs, which, as I said before, they look a lot more green. They've got a lot more of a green tinge to them than a 60-watt bulb or a kind of 60-watt, pretentious rustic bulb like the last one that I used. Cross-processed intensifies that. The Kodak 200 looks quite intense as well. It seems that particular stock was quite an intense one. Fuji 400 looks more natural. That's a better skin tone. The Kodak 400 still kind of green, and it turns the sort of magnolia paint that I had on the walls in my flat, the flat that I was living in at the time, where I took that particular photo. Turns that magnolia into a kind of greeny colour. Does kind of look interesting though, but I think you would want to use it for something where you'd kind of plan to have that sort of green tinge to it, so it was deliberate. If you weren't planning it, it probably wouldn't be so good. Paper lampshades, yeah, those China balls, I believe that's what a lot of people call them. If you're going to use kind of household bulbs in photography, those China balls are very good because they just soften the light a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer. The majority of the photos that I took in this experiment, I basically used a kind of a 3-point lighting system where I kind of had a light behind them for a backlight and 2 lights in front of them. So the Kodak 400, the 3 photos that I've taken with the Kodak 400 there, they all have like 3 bulbs inside, 3 paper lampshades, 2 in front, 1 behind. The Fuji 400 on the end there, the energy saver bulb, that is only using 1 bulb with 1 paper lampshade, and you can kind of tell in that photo because it looks like he's kind of melding into the background a bit. The background's very dark and you can't really see any kind of edge around him. It's more like he's kind of peeking out of the darkness, but I actually quite like the effect of that. But yeah, but that was because I didn't really have much time when I was taking that. That one was taken in a film studio, a small film studio in my old university. that I didn't really have much time in. So it was taken under a ladder with him on his knees, as opposed to most of the other ones, which were taken on a seat. The other three were taken in my flat. I didn't get to use the paper lampshades with every single film speed. The slower film speeds, it simply wasn't possible because it kind of dulled the light so much that it wasn't picking up on the slower film speed. So as you can see, these are just the 400 ISO stocks where I've had the chance to use the paper lampshade. But you can see the different types of bulbs that I've used there. The rustic bulb obviously has the warm kind of sepia-ish kind of glow to it. Energy saver bulbs has the kind of greenish tint. The 60-watt bulb, has quite a kind of warm glow as well. Not quite as intense as the rustic bulb, a little bit more subtle. Um, in this experiment, the majority of the photos were taken in the film studio in my university. Some of them, however, were taken in my flat instead. Okay, so here's the cloudy winter daylight. I felt like I should specify that it's cloudy winter daylight because these photos were taken in the northeast of England in November, late November, so it's not the kind of bright sunlight that you would expect when people talk about daylight photography. So we've got two stocks here, Kodak 400, Kodak 200. The Kodak 400, you can see it's a bit pasty and that thing, but I mean, I think living in this kind of climate does make you pasty, so that's kind of quite true to life. The Kodak 200 there's something interesting happening there with the door open behind him, and that corridor behind that door is lit with kind of fluorescent lights, the type you'd have in an office. And against the daylight, they've kind of ended up looking a little bit green, so you've got that kind of greenish looking light kind of coming out from the door behind him. Kind of interesting. The book I was getting them to hold, by the way, was just an art book with a Mark Rothko, an early Mark Rothko painting in it. Just thought it had some interesting colours in. Didn't have a colour chart. Improvised. Yeah, we've got the cool lights. Once again, one's taken in a studio, one's taken in my flat. For practical reasons, and not the fairest test in the world, because obviously my flat with the magnolia walls means that the light's probably going to react a little bit differently, but I think it's enough to kind of get the gist of the way that the kind of different lights affect things. As you can see, the sun's still setting when we were taking this on the Kodak 400, which means like through my blinds there, when my blinds in my old flat were broken so they couldn't close, through my blinds there you can see there's still some daylight coming in there, so that probably affects it as well. Once again, my magnolia walls look a little bit greenish tinted with that cool light on the Kodak 400. So this is the difference between a redhead and a Fresnel. Fresnels are kind of similar to redheads, except they've got like a lens on over the light, which means the light is a little bit more direct. They're both quite intense. I wouldn't recommend lighting somebody with just a Fresnel or a redhead without any scrim on it. But for the sake of this experiment, I wanted to kind of try every single sort of type of light, so I was wanting to try them without scrim as well and stuff. You've got some quite bad kind of light leak from that kind of backlight in the Fresnel. But But yeah, as you can see, the lens on the Fresnel means that the light on the Fresnel picture is a lot more direct. It's a lot more on the subject, Jamie. The kind of studio behind him isn't really illuminated. The ladder behind him is a lot duller, whereas with the red head there, you can see that the studio behind him has been quite lit by it as well, because it's not as direct a light. You can see the screen in the background. The ladder is extremely lit up behind him. And back onto the scrim topic, we've got a Fresnel with scrim, a Fresnel without scrim, and this really kind of shows the kind of extremes of difference that you can get with and without scrim. The one without scrim looks extremely intense. If you lit anyone like that in a film, I think it would possibly take someone out of the story, because it just wouldn't look realistic. The one with the scrim, it's a lot more muted. The skin tone looks better. Got a lot of backlight coming into that though. Yeah. These photos, by the way, I wasn't trying to take like really interesting photos for their own artistic sake or anything like that. I was just trying to kind of do a basic test with all the different types of light in film. Anyway, that's all. Thanks, bye. Okay, that was the video. Stay tuned to this channel. I've got more kind of lighting experiments that I'd like to share with you. Also, I've just listened back to that recording that I just made, my narration. It's unbelievably mumbly and like a bit crap. But hopefully that'll get less. Hopefully I'll kind of get better as time goes on. And yeah, you'll be able to. I'll speak more clearly, and you'll be able to understand me more. Oh my god.